Have you seen Star Wars?
Dave Filoni and Lin Brennan have been the new Lucasfilm presidents for only a couple months, but already we want to know what they have in store for the future of Star Wars. And recently, in an interview leading up to The Mandalorian and Grogu's release this week, Collider asked Dave Filoni what his plans are for Star Wars, and he said, "I'm just looking at the stories and the potential and planning what I'd like to do. I believe in having an overarching idea, then saying, okay, it's this many of that, and then we can have that. There are certain things that have been in motion already that obviously I want to continue." Jon Favreau and I have had a great partnership for many years now telling stories, so I look at the stories that I'm kind of planning and architecting, and I look at the other creative talents that bring us also great stories, and I just try to find a way to make them all work. Now, when he says there are certain things that have been in motion that he wants to continue, to me that's obviously the Simon Kinberg trilogy, which by this point is kind of far along in the writing development process. I mean, the last time we heard something solid about it was from Kennedy and what she said in January in her exit interview, that they did a new treatment that was 70 pages, which is very long for Hollywood standards. And I think that means they've mostly agreed on the fundamentals of the trilogy and the story. And Kinberg would turn in something new, according to Kennedy, in March of this year, 2026. So that was 2 months ago that Kinberg lightly turned in the next phase of the scripts, possibly a screenplay for the first film or something like that. And then you have the Rey standalone film that if that is still happening, if it's still happening, I actually think that's the next film after Starfighter in 2027. That's, in my opinion, out of the three that they had announced in 2023 at Celebration, the most likely one that's going to be after Starfighter, which right now is honestly the question for Star Wars fans. What happens after 2027 when Starfighter releases? It's obvious that Lucasfilm looks at Rey and the sequels as a huge part of the future of the brand, and Filoni is trying to fit that era in with the Mandoverse as well, because the Mandoverse covers that 30 years that lead into the sequels, which is where his comments about having this overarching story, I think, come into play. I think Dave Filoni wants to continue the Mandoverse with Jon Favreau to fill out the 30 years between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens, and then start the next era, post-sequel trilogy, with the Rey standalone film and the Simon Kinberg trilogy. What's nice about this is that it means the next era is being planned out. What sucks is I think some of the side stories that we were supposed to get, some of these standalone films like the Taika Waititi Star Wars movie or the James Mangold movie, and that's the one out of all of them that they've announced that I really have a lot of interest in. It's the only one I want them to really make. It will likely be pushed to the side for years or just never happen. It seems like it's just not going to happen. Again, I can never win with these situations. Now, Dave also mentions that he's not planning in terms of making a certain amount of shows and movies per year. Now, I do believe that Disney has a quota that they want Lucasfilm to meet over like the next 5 to 10 years. But if we get one live action show a year and one movie every 2 or 3 years, honestly, I think that would be more than enough to satisfy Disney if certain numbers are hit, like $1 billion in the box office for the movies and probably strong viewership numbers for the shows, better than like The Acolyte, Skeleton Crew, or Boba Fett. I do think there are certain numbers that Disney is mandating from Lucasfilm. But the way I see things through, I would say 2030 right now with Dave and Linwin taking over, is that right now they're gearing up for that next era of Star Wars. Kennedy gave them like this very small buffer window with 2026 and 2027. And it seems like they knew back in 2024 where they were going with the Lucasfilm leadership with Dave and Linwin taking over. So I think they've been working on some of this stuff for quite some time. Specifically, the Simon Kinberg trilogy and that Rey movie is something that they've been really focusing on over the past couple of years. So it does look to me that with this little buffer window that we have of 2026 and 2027, that's just an extra 2 years they get to work on things, because we're getting The Mandalorian and Grogu this year and tomorrow, pretty much. Starfighter is next year, with Ahsoka Season 2 and Maul's Shadow Lord Season 2 probably releasing in 2027 as well. So 2026 and 2027 is where they ramp up production on the live-action shows and movies for Star Wars. And don't forget, the new leadership for both Disney and Lucasfilm met a couple weeks ago. Disney CEO Josh D'Amaro, Disney President Dana Walden, Disney Studio Chief Alan Bergman, all of them met with the Lucasfilm executives to discuss the future of Star Wars. So it's not only a new era for Lucasfilm's leadership, but also Disney's. Alan Bergman has been around for a while, so he's not like a really new face to the team. He's probably one of the veterans at this point, but his boss Dana Walden is now like another person with authority over Star Wars. So the dynamics have really changed for Star Wars and the executive suite, pretty much. The chain of command used to be like Kathleen Kennedy, president of Lucasfilm, Kevin Feige, president of Marvel, wherever the hell he does over there. And then above them is like Alan Horn, and above Alan Horn is like Bob Iger. But they really, specifically Horn and Iger, they kind of let Kathy do whatever the hell she wanted to do because they knew the power and respect she had in the industry and all that crap. They didn't want to be overbearing. Now the chain of command is like Dave Filoni and Lin-Win Brennan, and then they're under Alan Bergman, who's under Dana Walden and Josh D'Amaro. So there's a lot more hands in the pot. I'm really curious to see how this new team tackles Star Wars and the challenges that it has as a brand right now and what Dave and Lin-Win are going to be able to do. Because my big fear from the outside looking in is like, are we going to be able to get some of the great Hollywood talents out there like Tony Gilroy or a James Mangold or anything like that? They even spoke with Vince Gilligan a couple years ago. Apparently, that's what Kathleen Kennedy was saying. And I would love for him to do a Star Wars show. So it's stuff like that I am curious about of who's going to be in the future of planning for Star Wars when it comes to the creatives and everything like that. But it does seem like at least Dave has a temporary plan for the next couple years of where he wants to go with things. But I do hope we see some new stuff. I mean, the Kimberg trilogy doesn't excite me. The Rey movie doesn't really excite me. The James Mangold, Dawn of the Jedi, that era, even anything Old Republic, that stuff does interest me. But we'll see. We'll see where things go. But tell me your thoughts in the comment section below. What do you guys think about Dave's comments on the future of Star Wars, and what do you think his plan is ultimately going to be surrounding the sequel trilogy, the Mandoverse, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get something with the Old Republic. Thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed. Comment, subscribe to support the channel. If you haven't checked out my latest documentary, The History of Disney Star Wars, in the link below. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Star Wars Only. I'll see you all next time, and may the Force be with you always.